Greetings and welcome to Growth Hacking Secrets. I'm your host, Muhammad Siddique from Atlanta, Georgia, and the co author of New Success Secrets available on Amazon. On this episode, we have a special guest, Matthew Mottola. Matthew is an author of Human Cloud, co author of Venture L, and Forbes contributor. Please join me to give a warm welcome to our guest, Matthew Mottola. Matthew, welcome.
Hey, thanks for having me. Happy Monday.
Happy Monday. Thank you so much. Let me start with this. Where were you? What happened? Who were you surrounded with that inspired you to do what you do today?
So it's funny. I can't pinpoint the exact moment. To be honest, it's felt like a 10-year sort of continuous slog that there's been little moments of lift, but at the same time, there's been so much work in the background that you don't know when it was. I think, to be honest, I'm going to go all the way back to my childhood and seeing my grandma, and specifically seeing the way that she treated people and wanting to apply sort of that feeling that she gave us and the people around her to everything that I do, which when you talk about business, when you talk about entrepreneurship, it's literally just helping people. And so everything that I've done, I kind of translate that experience of how do my grandma make me feel to be not too geeky, but every single user story of the software, that's sort of the success criteria is how does this make people feel?
What are the top 3 mistakes to avoid?
Don't get too focused. At the same time, don't get too lazy. And so mistake number 1, especially in entrepreneurship, is you fall in love with something and you say, this is the best solution ever. It's going to work. There's no way it can't work. And then you just totally miss the target because you have the wrong problem statement. But then mistake number 2 is when you say, all right, something, if you get too deep into sort of the lean startup or, whatever the terms are, if you get too focused on we're not going to know the answer and we have to have perfect validation around data. And so mistake number 2 is then just saying, well, we need, in not being too persistent. So mistake number 1, kind of just saying there's one answer and focusing on it. Mistake number 2, though, is not actually committing to something. And then I think number 3, to be honest, is just not doing things that you're really excited about. I know it sounds really generic and sort of fluffy and qualitative, but business and entrepreneurship and starting a company, it's a grind and it's a full marathon. And so if you don't absolutely love what you're doing and the customers that you're solving it for, I don't know how in the world you're going to get through this slog. So don't focus on one thing or don't focus on fall in love with your solution. At the same time, do pick one thing. And then, so those are the 3.
What is your greatest failure story? What did you learn and how did you recover from it?
Every single day. I feel like I fail every single day. If I'm not failing, it means I'm not trying hard enough. I'd say there's been failures that I've learned from that were pretty huge along the way. And so one major failure when I started my first company, I literally had no idea what I was doing. I had never started a company before. I had none of that in my past experience. And so I went and I built a pitch deck, spent $2,000, it was my savings at the time, and ran around to what I thought were investors trying to start a quote unquote company. Mistake number 2 is second company, didn't, learn from then. So went out and actually got some customers, but then couldn't actually build it myself. And so that was a huge failure of, oh no, I can't actually develop software. And then mistake number 3, or, you call the third, was in the first startup that I worked at, I didn't know how to take something at scale. And so I built it, I got it to, I think it was like over $1 million in pipeline, but then I didn't know how the hell to scale it. And so, I can't say there's been one massive failure, but I'll tell you what, when those failures happened, they felt like the one massive failure. So those are the 3 that I'd point to.
What did you learn and how did you recover from it?
Keep going. Keep going. Focus on one, at least in my case, focus on one major problem statement. So I like to always joke, like I actually have no skills. Technically, I'm a really good product manager. I'm a pretty above it, like mediocre CEO in terms of I'm still learning because it's my first time like running a venture-backed company. But in terms of what did I learn, just keep adjusting, keep going, keep learning. No one's going to ever know everything. But I think in entrepreneurship, one of our strengths is that we're not scared to jump into an abyss of absolutely nothing and uncertainty. And so with, the first startup, I think I really learned everything of what not to do, or in terms of how not to run a company. Second thing, I learned how important it is to have the technical chops when you're doing it. And then something I've learned all along through this is that the exponential returns when you focus on one sort of problem statement for your career are huge. And so all I've focused on is freelance economy for my whole career. Like I said, I have no skills, but I'm damn good at dealing with the freelance economy.
What are your top three success secrets that others can model from?
Ooh, okay. You know what's interesting? I bet if we took someone else and said, "Hey, look at Matt from the outside," they would have a much better answer. Because one thing I've noticed from people, if they're really if they're experts, they usually don't know why, and you just have to model their behavior, right, and look at them from an outside and say, "Oh, that they seem to keep doing these certain things." I think one thing that I've been able to notice is that I'm really good at making sure important things don't fall through the cracks. With that said, I'm really bad at making sure that everything happens. So let's say there's 10 things that are on my roadmap right now. Probably only like 2 to 3 will actually get accomplished, and the rest will not happen. But I have been very, very relentlessly good at making sure that the important things do happen. So that's been number one for me, is just always making sure that happens. Number two, I think, is relationships. I mean, everyone always says how important networking is, but I like to think about it not as networking, but as relationship building. And the more you stay in a specific industry or problem statement, the more that you're going to have relationships that, like I said, exponentially build up. So number two is, just focus on the relationships that you're building. And, number three, to sort of pile on top of that, is don't be scared to actually not like somebody or not like something within your industry. I think that's one thing early on in my career was you want everyone to like you. Right. And you go around wanting to make everybody happy, when in reality, like only 20% or 10% of people are going to like you. And it's those 10% of people that absolutely love you that make you grow a business or enable you to scale your career. And so, so that'd be the last thing I'd say is don't worry about pleasing everybody. Focus on the people that actually really, really do love you. And most important, that you can really, really help.
How do you deal with people who don't like you?
Just don't deal with them. Just don't. I think as a CEO, it's really tough because, you're the public face of the company, right? And you have to make sure that whether it's investors, whether it's PR, whether it's new employees that you want to bring on, it can feel like a major hit. So like one thing that happens a lot to me is I'll get a podcast request, right? Or a speaking request or some sort of request. And I'll know that the people in the back end, like I personally haven't had anything happen, but I know that there's a little gray area that I personally don't want my brand to be associated with. And at the time, it hurts because that's views and that's conversions and that's potential customers that you're losing out on. But one thing I have done really well is I do have a group of mentors behind me that are always holding me accountable to making sure that I sort of stay true. And one huge thing is I actually don't necessarily care about money necessarily. I care more about impact. And so that makes it easier for me to reject, pretty sizable speaking gigs or podcasts or partnerships.
Let's do a role play. Imagine you would have rejected me. What you would have said it.
Let's say, repeat the question, please.
Just let's do a role play. Imagine I'm another podcaster which you rejected. I'm one of them. And then you said no to me. What would you say? So that way you don't want to hurt a feeling, at the same time still communicate the message.
Yeah, I appreciate the offer, but I can't commit at this time. And I think one thing that's very important for both sides of any transaction to understand is, listen, even though someone's paying you, you're also selling your time. And one thing that's very important to me is everybody that I work with, I want to make sure that I give them the respect of my time. And, a podcast like this, it's not just a let's roll out of bed and let's hop on. It's a let's research before, let's make sure that's the right brand, and let's make sure that I can deliver value to their audience. And I think that's the easiest way usually to reject, is just letting them know, I don't think I can bring value to your audience. And that's generally, it's true in actually a lot of cases. A lot of times when I reject, it's mostly just because there's more valuable people out there. One thing that I do, if it's not an ethical thing, but if it's just something that I genuinely feel like I can't help or I'm not the best at, I will always sort of refer people that I think could be better. And this happens a lot in my advising, actually, is they'll ask me questions that are just something I'm not the best expert at, and I'll just refer. I'll say, listen, you should go talk with Michael or someone else.
What is your company motto?
Ooh, I think in general, it's speak soft, carry a big stick. I hope that we're always known as the company that nobody necessarily knows about, but the people that do know about, we've made a massive, massive impact in their life.
Who is your ideal client?
Ooh. So for VentureL, it's interesting because I got two. For VentureL, we love ambitious freelancers that fit within the creative space. So generally, it's the 6 month to 2 year freelancer that does something like content design or sort of low development. But then with my own consulting practice, so I do freelance myself. I help leaders scale through hiring freelancers. Generally, it's a CEO or CMO. It's generally a leader that it can be enterprise or small, but the most important thing is that they're focused on impact and that they're not saying, let me just continue this, organizational process to get me promoted. They want to make a massive, massive impact, and they know that hiring freelancers is a better, faster, and more cost-efficient way.
How do you find your ideal client?
Right now, it's all word of mouth. And this is something where if you're just starting, don't listen to what I'm going to say, because it has taken over 8 years to build up. But right now, every ounce of value has been word of mouth. One thing that's very important early in your career is think about the channels that you want to occupy. And a channel can be a website, it can be you're a contributor, it can be you're a partner somewhere, it can be you're an entrepreneur in residence. There's so many different ways that you can get in front of your potential clients. For me personally, I have my own newsletter that I've built my whole career. I have a book published by HarperCollins. I have a Forbes contributor post, and then I have a lot of deep relationships in the background. So it's been word of mouth for me.
How do you engage your ideal client?
Matching expectations. So if it's something that a client says, hey, I want this huge thing, I'm not going to turn around and say, yeah, it'll be $2,000. I'm going to turn around and say that'll be $200,000. Happy to do it for $200,000. But if you want to get started in a smaller way, it'll be $2,000. So the number one thing, especially when we're talking about a freelance environment, is matching expectations is generally where most leaders fail on both ends of the fence. The leader that's doing the hiring generally fails because they don't know how to hire, how much to charge, what needs to happen. Vice versa, the freelancer or myself in this case generally struggle at doing that exact thing. So if you can manage expectations, that's like 99.9% of the battle.
What are your well-defined products and or services?
So Venturel, software that's going to make you better. Make you better, meaning you're going to earn more money, or you're going to spend less time in the money that you want to make. We call it an operating system, but in reality, think about the most important thing in your business. If you're a freelancer, it's being able to mobilize your tribe. So if you're a designer, it's being able to have a content writer and a developer sort of on bench and go and winning website projects. So if you're a freelancer, Venturel is my number one product. Second one, me personally, the Human Cloud book. If you're a leader, this is going to teach you about sort of what the future of work looks like and how to really, really take advantage of it. Third product, which is sort of me, myself, and my own freelance business. I help leaders scale by hiring freelancers. Depends on where you are in your journey. If you've already hired one, that's great. If you haven't, that's also great, but there's going to be a sort of different package depending on where you stand.
Why someone should buy from you?
This is a good question. No one's actually, obviously clients have kind of asked it indirectly, but in reality, it's all about acceleration. There's nothing that I'm going to tell them that they're not going to figure out in the next 1 to 30 years from when they do this thing, whether it's Venturel, whether it's my consulting practice or even the book. But I can take, in 10 minutes, I can give you 10 years of learning. And so don't think about it as you need me. Think about it as I can accelerate to get you to a point that's taken me 10 years.
How do you crush your competition?
We don't. We collaborate with. There's certain competitors that we do not deal with because they're more of the sort of zero sum, but we strongly believe in collaboration. We will show anybody sort of our internal specs and our roadmap if they're actually going to help the freelancers.
How do you deliver a 5-star client experience?
Expectation matching and little surprises. So little things like, you'd be surprised, little things like sending a t-shirt, so undervalued or so underrated. I mean, I have so many t-shirts from prior clients or companies, and I don't know what it is. It's just it's a little special thing that goes the extra distance. But beyond that, just managing expectations. It's really the most crucial piece of delivering outcomes.
How do you use your sales proposals to close more deals?
I don't use proposals. It's actually one thing I've learned in the freelance journey that surprised me, that a lot of freelancers mess up on. We have a conversation generally. Some clients I do close without ever talking to. Instead, I provide scoped outcomes. So for $2,000, you get this. For $5,000, you get this. For $15,000 plus, you get this. And I skip the SOW and I skip the MSA. I put an invoice first, and the invoice has the exact deliverables: week 1, week 2, week 3, week 4, week 5, week 6. I've noticed that just works better. And even as a leader, I would rather sign that SOW and get started working, sign that invoice and get started working ASAP. I do have like a structured SOW and a structured MSA, and we do provide that at Venturel if you need it. But to be honest, no, we don't really generally use proposals. And that's back to your ideal client. That's something unique with my ideal clients, is that their timing is that they're ready to buy like this. And so I don't go through, in current state, I do not go through a typical enterprise procurement or HR process.
How do you convert your clients into your brand ambassadors?
Shared ownership. Make them feel that it's their product, number one, because at Venturell it is. We are a global collaboration with the world's top freelancers. So that's the first thing. Number two, obviously there's some incentives. So little things like referral fees and those, if you can align them with the outcomes that your product can also deliver, that's sort of the gold. And then number three, just really, really make a fundamental impact in their life. I think that's one thing in software, at least, that we suck at. And I think it's a product of, we've had a Silicon Valley roadmap for like 20 years now, where you raise venture capital, you build a giant business in 5 to 10 years, you sell out, and the founder makes a bunch of money, but the actual customers themselves don't necessarily get as much value. That's one thing we do horribly in terms of software, but that's the number one thing in terms of how do you make your clients into ambassadors and evangelists and you name it. Just build things that really, really change their life.
We are about to move into lightning round. That means quick question.
No.
Are you ready?
Hit me.
What are you grateful for today?
Ooh, my grandmother.
How do you start your day?
Workout.
How young are you?
I love how you say young and not old. 28.
So, Matthew, you are not 28. You are 18 years old with 10 years experience.
Yeah. Beauty of the freelance economy.
What you want to do when you grow up?
I'll be honest. I really want a family. That's sort of, I'm more of like a white picket fence family person. If we have to give like a business answer, I'd say I eventually want to own a coffee shop, like later in life.
What is
work
your
your
plan
ass off.
What is your plan to achieve your goal?
Work your ass off and be relentless in saying no to things that aren't with that plan.
How will you feel in case you don't achieve your goal?
That's a good question. I think so long as I've been a good person and put sort of others ahead of myself, I'd feel okay.
How do you overcome a challenge life throws at you?
I'll show you my answer. Coffee.
What is the advice you will give to a younger yourself?
Relax, chill out, but still work your ass off.
Once you have a revenue generating idea, how do you convince your significant other?
Show them, don't say anything. Just like the best sales calls, don't say anything, show them and listen.
Why being impactful is important to you?
Ooh. I don't know. Now we're getting like spiritual. I don't know. I will say, I think one thing about most like entrepreneurs that go and they build these massive companies, it is not normal and I don't recommend it. A lot of people ask me, they'll be like, hey, like if you had kids, would you recommend your kids to follow the same path as you? My answer is hell no. I think in most cases, entrepreneurship is a sickness. And I think anyone that tries to make entrepreneurship seem like this beautiful thing, it's not. You get paid less, you work 10 times more, you have way more risk, you get sued. Like it's not a good path. And so I think, why is important to be impactful? I don't know. I have no idea. All I know is I have this default that I need to go build businesses and take care of the world versus just being able to sit in a job. I kind of wish I could just sit in a job.
Who is your living mentor and what's the impact?
So you've heard this I think this is the third time I'm mentioning it. My grandma, she's like by far mentor, role model, everything. I do have some incredible mentors in the background that have helped me my whole life. There's a guy named Ken Jackman at a Newburyport that actually was the first person that said, don't do X. And I won't tell you what X was. X was the traditional corporate route for me. Instead, go chase what you want. And you'll figure out a way to make it work. I jumped to San Francisco based off of his advice. There's also a guy named Mike Trotta that owned a manufacturing company that really, really made me fall. Maybe he's the one that really made me fall in love with making an impact. It was a small manufacturing company, and the projects that I did with him just really showed me that you can make a serious impact in the individual people's lives through business. So those two really, really, really made an impact in my life. A woman named Gina Adamo, also based out of my hometown. She took me in when I was young and basically just showed me the ropes of even how to build a resume and those kind of things. But my grandma is sort of my lead role model and mentor.
I like to interview your two business mentors that you just mentioned. Do you mind sharing making the
Yeah, of course.
What do you want to be remembered for?
That's a good question. I think just someone that loved his hometown and made an impact. I don't necessarily care how big that impact is. I just want people to look and say, "Wow, that person left the world better than when he showed up."
How can we support you?
You already have. This is perfect.
Yeah. Here is the website venturel.io.
Awesome. And anyone, if you go to my LinkedIn, that's generally like the number one source to find me. If you're interested in the book, it's on Amazon. You can also Google it, humancloudbook.com. We're here to help.
We are about to wrap up. I'd like to have you a few words about your today's guest experience on the show. Here is my question. What would you say about your today's guest experience on the show?
Easy, simple. For those listening, automate everything you can, and you did, and so that was great.
What would you say as a final word?
It's not the most motivational, but have a good day. Get in front of your computer or your machine or whatever you're building out there, and just go kick ass.
Thank you so much, Matthew, for sharing your wisdom with us today on the behalf of Growth Hacking Secrets community and our entire team. We really appreciate you. This is Muhammad Siddique signing off from Atlanta, Georgia. Until the next episode, all good wishes.
All right. Have a good one, Siddique. Thank you.